Hi, I'm Richard from Frozen Well. Welcome back to this, a devlog for my game Earning a Living, that I recently created over a period of 8 days for Indie Game Squads Jamoween Game Jam. So the jam started and the theme has been announced. The theme is, death is not the end, it's only the beginning. Time to get my thinking cap on and see what ideas I can come up with. So, the first game idea I've had is based upon the Ludum Dare 46 48-hour jam winning game Keep It Alive. I love the style of this game where you had a few tasks that you had to do to reach your goal. I decided that this type of game would translate well to a game where you're working in a crematorium and have to keep the furnace burning. So with this in mind, I had a little bit of time left on day 1 and made a start. By the end of the day, I had the start of a very basic game. It's day 2 of the jam, and after a little bit more work on the game, I just didn't like it, so it was back to the drawing board. After some time I decided to stick with the crematorium theme, but decided to make a game where the mechanics were based on the 80s arcade game Tapper. In Tapper you had to send beers down the bar to the customers and then collect the empty glasses as they were sent back. I decided that I could use a similar mechanic to deal with the processes in a crematorium. So I got to work on the game. To begin with, I started to mock up a basic level in Blender. I used Blender so that I could get the perspective of the various parts of the levels correct. The plan was then to use these 3D renders as a basis for the pixel art. After getting the mock-up done, I started to add the various parts to Godot and made a start on the code. Here's the first bit working in a basic state. You can collect a coffin that's been delivered and then send it off to the furnace. After some more work, I now have a very basic gameplay loop implemented and working. To start off with, coffins are delivered from the hearse at the top of the screen at random intervals. The player has to collect these and then put them on the conveyor belt below to send them off to the furnace. Next up, an urn is returned from the furnace, which again the player has to collect and send on to the waiting mourning relative. The relative then pays for your services and you have to collect the payment when it's returned to you at the bottom. Still to be implemented is the need for the player to keep shoveling coal into the furnace to get an increased score bonus depending on how hot the furnace is. I've made some more progress and now have a countdown timer at the start of the level to prepare the player for the impending manic gameplay. I've also started to work on the art for the game, and as you can see in the video, I've created some better art for the coffins, conveyor belts and started to work on the furnace. So next I'll be continuing with making more of the art assets needed for the game. The game is starting to come together nicely now, and I've added a splash screen when the game starts and also a basic menu with a play button. In terms of the game itself, I've made some good progress on the art assets for the game. We now have our player character all drawn and added. Also I've worked further on the hearse that delivers the coffins and added the sprite for the urn. Right, I've done some more work on the game and I've now made a change to the way the coffins are spawned in the game. Before they were just created at random intervals, and I found that this could mean that the player was unable to collect the coffin without dropping another item. Therefore, I've added a button that the player has to press to release a coffin. This now means that the player is in control of the flow of the game, and can only blame themselves if they drop an item, instead of it being an annoying feature of the game. I've also added an indicator to show what the player is carrying at any time. This is displayed as a small icon above the player's head. Another feature added is when the player scores any points, the points they've scored appear from the item collected to give the player some visual feedback. That's the jam finished now, and here's what I created. I added the instructions of how to play the game to the menu along with the keys. I've seen a few people doing this lately and thought it was a really good idea. I ended up making the game time based. You have 2 minutes to play the game and earn as much money as you can in this time. You get money for collecting items off the various conveyor belts and also for delivering the urn to the mourner and putting the coffin in the furnace. I've added a temperature gauge to the furnace and you keep this raised to get a bigger score for burning the coffin. I'm really pleased with how this game came out and had a lot of fun making it. Turns out I wasn't the only one who liked it, as when the voting was finished I'd managed to score highest in 4 of the 5 categories that the jam was rated on, and had won the jam. There was also a second award given by PedroPanache, a Twitch streamer who came up with the theme for the jam, and he chose my game for this award as well. I was really pleased to have won both awards, especially up against some other really great games. The link to the jam is in the description and you can check out all the entries there. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video please hit the subscribe button.